obviously you made some national news here in the last couple weeks. You know, you had mentioned how Caleb Williams had to, you know, kind of help himself, you know, with some of his film study. And there's been a lot of discussion about how Caleb Williams prepared for games, but you had a little bit of insight on just how that went about as the season went on. If you want to share it with some of our audience that didn't know.
Yeah. So it's funny because it went so viral this last couple of weeks, and it was something that I've known since November. And I've mentioned in a few of my podcasts in November, but the right person caught it, I guess, in one of the recent ones, and it turned into more, and then Barstool kind of took onto it. But yeah, so I'm not allowed to say who told me this, but I will tell you it is somebody who is very, very close with Caleb and the off-season workouts and things that he does in that realm. And it was a moment where he said, after Shane Waldron was fired, we were having a conversation of where I said, you know, what a disaster that was. I feel sorry for Caleb, more so having that type of talk. And he started sharing stories. He also said, these were the words, that there's a lot he can't even share with me, but that it was, I'm trying to think of the exact wording he said. It was a horror show or horror story, something like that. He was like, there are horror stories I could tell you about that situation, is what he said. And I'm like, oh, that's awesome. But the one that he said he could share with me was the one that I shared with on my podcast a few times that kind of went around, was that Caleb made a phone call to these guys and just was like, hey man, is there any way that I can get somebody to help me go over film? And they were all kind of like, hold on. What? Like, the Bears aren't, Shane Waldron and the Bears aren't helping you go over film? And pretty much he said no. Like, it was a weird dynamic between him and Shane for whatever reason. The word that my source told me was that Shane was intimidated by Caleb. That's the word he used. And it was a really weird dynamic between the two. So I don't know exactly when it started, how things kind of unraveled, because it did feel like before things went downhill again, the Bears had a few games where you were like, okay, the Rams game, for example. I remember watching the Rams game and being like, okay, like everything's starting to connect now. Shane's using these guys in the right way. And then when the Jags game happened, obviously Cole Kmet's getting the ball again. So you thought things were getting fixed. But what I think it was is Caleb was just kind of doing his own thing at that point and was like, all right, well, I'll just figure it out on my own if it's not going to happen here. So it's unfortunate start, but I do think that if anything, you have to give an applause to Caleb Williams for being able to get through a lot of that stuff, and also being willing to outsource and put in extra work when he didn't feel like he was getting the work he needed with Shane and within the organization.
We all silly like the mayor.